a visual artist, currently based in County Kerry. My work is mainly drawing, so drawing kind of underpins everything, and then I make videos. I sometimes make small artist publications, so that involves writing, and I make installations and sound works as well, so it's kind of a fairly open practice. I'm from Inch in County Kerry, so that's where I grew up, but I've spent time away in London and Dublin and various other places, but I always kind of come and go from County Kerry. I think it's always kind of very much influenced like how I make work and the kind of things I'm interested in, so this rural vernacular idea, so like it's essentially like living in a theatre, this small village, so it has I think impacted the narratives that kind of come up in the work about land and arguments about land and people's sense of space in the world. It's always sort of been there in the work. It's kind of come in and out over the years, but I think probably when I went to London doing a master's, the need to connect to that became more kind of important, and I made a piece about an artist who goes missing from a fictional island, so that sort of started to bring in ideas of I suppose landscape and nature, protecting that landscape and nature for kind of future generations. That started to become a sort of, there was a sense of urgency around that. The studio setup is like multi-site, so I have a welding area, Dad's old milking parlour. It's set up with lights and power. That's where I do welding and kind of heavier work, and then in the house that we live in I have like a dry studio, so that's where I make my drawings and do like some of the editing and like sound work and also writing. So that for me works really well, like having this kind of really dirty heavy space and then also the place where things can be kind of clean and cared for. I develop an idea over time, so like most days I would go for a run. That process of being outside and moving through space allows ideas to come to mind, I suppose, when you're kind of relaxed and letting yourself quieten down. So sometimes when I get ideas, they mostly then become drawings, and then from the drawings then sometimes they become other things like videos or like sculptural work. It's very important for me, like other artists' work actually is like fundamentally important. So like, going to see shows, whether that's here in Ireland or and get to see some really amazing work, and that's always really influenced me. And reading has been a big part of where I get ideas from and what inspires me. So like literature and novels have been very inspirational as well. It always starts with drawing, so like the drawing always seems to be there as kind of like the beginning step. Then I kind of feel it out whether that drawing could then become, say, what I call a drawing, but essentially it's probably a sculpture. So it looks like a sculpture, but I still think of it as a drawing. So work I made for a show in Limerick for EVA International, it was a drawing of a hay shed that then became a 3D drawing in space made out of metal. Sometimes it seems more appropriate that the work becomes a heavier material. In 2019 I made a piece called Cosmic Granny, and that was a text work. It was like a geo poem that I wrote, very short poem, made in 1 metre high wooden letters and then installed that on a mountain in Kerry, and it was sort of about the loss of the old days. To coincide that, made a newspaper that talked about the death of the post office and the death of the hay shed. The newspaper had like a classified section where there was wanted things and for sale things, but the things for sale were like Dancing at the Crossroads and nature, and there was newspaper articles about like the government collaborating with Lidl and Aldi and wanting to cover the countryside in plastic to preserve it. So sort of about like the loss of nature. I think as time goes on, actually writing is becoming a big component to the work. So for the commission through the doc, I made a calendar. It's basically a manual for having visitors. So it's what to do if you're having visitors in a scenic area, and there's a kind of list of protocols and health and safety recommendations. It's kind of humorous bent, like absurdist humour. So the written word actually in my practice seems to be becoming a bigger component in bringing that kind of message out there in the work, I think. I was very lucky. I had an amazing secondary school art teacher she was regimented around like art history. Although I was quite good at drawing and making visual art, she pulled me aside and told me I was going to fail the Leaving Cert if I didn't cop on and start learning my art history. And I think that to have that rigour from her at that early age was really important, because I realised then that I couldn't just make artworks without there being a backbone and a kind of idea of building on the history of others' practices to kind of make your own work. So it's been a long path to be an artist full-time. I've just been very fortunate that I have really good support from the Arts Council, and that's made like a fundamental difference to me being able to actually pursue art full-time. Over the years, like have out of sheer stubbornness stuck with it. It's something I always loved, and it's something I always wanted to do, but it has been quite difficult to be an artist full-time. For me, there's great freedom in that life. It's also a life of great discipline, just from looking after oneself. So there was always this idea that like you could live a crazy rock and roll lifestyle and, you know, make great artworks. I found that that doesn't work so good for me. So I've learned to build it into my life as a kind of real way of living. But yeah, it's taken a lot of hard work, and I think that hard work never really lets up. So yeah, I think resilience goes well with the life of an artist, maybe.